Hello everyone, it's indeed inspiring to see you back again. We are discussing stateful versus stateless. So let me help you out. What exactly is this? This is very much being spoken about term that is stateful and stateless, and different architectures are being created and presented with the help of this. So let me add a new slide and let's work upon it. So if I talk about stateful, so it basically means something which is having related to server side. And if I talk about stateless, so in that particular case, it is something in relation with the client side. So I will explain you how. So stateless. So this is related to client side. Now how I will explain you. So in any architecture, if you see that whatever kind of architecture we create, so what happens there? We have a server, we have client. So these two kind of machines or systems which we are having. Now initially, if you see that the server side, let's say this is the server side. So server were always heavy, and we can call them as they are thick machines. Servers are thick machines. This is what we can call them as. And at the same time, if you go for client, so client won't be thick. The client would actually be known as thin machine. So this machine I can represent as client, and I'll call it as thin. Now there is a logical reason why we are calling them as thick or thin. The logical reason is that whatever major operations are to be done, they will be done, heavy operations will be done on server side, they won't be done on the client side. So that is the major reason that we call it as thick, because it is heavy, and we call the server side thick and client side as thin, because client side it does not basically need to manage or maintain very heavy operations. So this is how was the architecture, and server used to manage everything. So this I will call this particular as this is an architecture which is called as stateful architecture, because in case of stateful architecture, the server is responsible for managing out the data or transactions, whatever transactions are being happening. So the server is actually responsible for managing out same. So stateful. Now what happened, so with the help of with the advancement in technology with time, even the clients, so in stateful if you see that clients are basically thin, and in case of with time we don't have thin clients, we have basically clients became thick. And what does this mean? This basically means that the clients now can handle or can store the transactions. So clients can basically store the transactions which are getting generated, and those transactions can then be used for the further operations. So you can see the difference. Earlier the transactions were stored at server side. So therefore when transactions are stored at server side, it is actually called as stateful. But in case transactions are handled or are basically stored at client side, that is called as stateless. So this is what is the meaning of the word, because the state is actually being preserved either on the server side or on the client side. It is being preserved. Now you can see that both the cases have advantages and disadvantages. For example, here if we have multiple servers, this is only one server, right? So if we have multiple servers in this particular case, so this is another server which we are having, and it has got multiple replicas. So now if you see that whenever some transaction is happening, let's say your some communication is happening, some transaction is happening, and that got started with the first machine, or I will give them a different color so that so the communication actually started with the first machine, and the orange one. So what happened, now that server needs to, it is stateful, so whatever transactions are happening, they will get stored here. So it needs to store all the transactions, but by any chance if this particular server got failed, So if that particular server got failed, in that case, what is going to happen? So this is an important thing, that if that server is getting failed, so what is going to happen? So here basically nothing is going to happen, because the transactions are stored at the client's not client side, server side. So this is one disadvantage, because the server was handling and it is not able to now sustain that particular information. So this is a disadvantage. Similar way, if you will talk about stateless, so in this particular case, let's say the client practices some wrong having some wrong practices, so even that would be a damage, that would also hamper. So in this case also we have challenges, when basically client is putting dummy data of previous transactions. So there basically solution is there, you can encrypt the data, right? So you can encrypt whatever transactions are happening, so that the client is not able to do such kind of malpractices. That is a solution to it. So each of the architecture has got some benefit and some solution, but I hope you are easily able to understand that what exactly is stateful and what exactly is stateless architecture, and this is what is used in Apache Flink also. We will discuss in detail. Thank you very much.